Hey everyone, today I want to share a little bit about my experience with a raw, mostly fruit based diet. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I'm noticing a lot of people in my own circle who are going through this big spiritual shift right now. And a lot of them are starting to say, I just don't know if I can eat meat anymore. And this can be very unexpected. It could be, I know for me, it was very scary, especially being an athlete, being told my whole life that I needed to be eating a certain amount of protein. But nevertheless, I decided to go for it, and I've had some major breakthroughs. I've experienced quite a few challenges, and I have some theories that I'm going to share with you guys today about things I'm still working through and still trying to figure out. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any experience, let me know down in the comments. And with that, let's jump in. So, my journey with diet started about 6 or 7 years ago when I kind of hit my own crisis and realized that the standard American diet had made me very unwell and very sick my whole life. And so I started with cutting out the inflammatory foods. I cut out refined seed and vegetable oils. I got rid of refined sugar. I cut out gluten, conventional dairy. And I noticed some massive changes in my health just by doing that. And what I kind of settled on was a paleo-ish, I guess. If you had to put a label on it, it would be closest to maybe a Weston A. Price type diet, and which centered around whole foods, a lot of fresh fruits and veggies, grass-fed, red meats, pasture-raised chicken and eggs. My carbs were pretty much limited to things like sweet potato, white rice, things like that. And this diet worked really well for me. I was kind of at the peak of my athletic career at this time. I was transitioning into college, and I noticed some massive improvements in just the way I was performing and in my mental clarity. And I stuck with this for about 5 plus years. It worked great up until about a year ago when I went to have some work done by a holistic dentist. And I had some things done in traditional dentistry in years past that I needed to get fixed by a dentist who understood more total body health. And what I found was I actually had some pretty major infections that I was fighting in my teeth and in my jaw. I got that taken care of, and pretty much immediately after, I came to this realization that I couldn't eat meat anymore. I suddenly went from loving meat and eating a ton to being just really repulsed. I would be eating meals, and afterwards I'd be so tired and sluggish that my eyes would just start closing. And so I knew that I needed to make a change. I didn't know what that change was. Right after that, I tried going to like a cooked vegan with a lot of beans and legumes and grains because I thought I needed my protein. And pretty quickly I realized that this wasn't going to work for me either. I didn't feel very good. I wasn't digesting things very well. And so I really didn't know where to go. And I remember one morning just kind of sending out a prayer like, God, universe, help me out. Show me what I need to do to take care of my body. And that very night, I was scrolling through my podcasts, and an interview popped up with a guy named Dr. Robert Morse. He's a big advocate for a fruit-based diet. He's been doing it himself for many years successfully, and one of his biggest arguments is that if you look at the anatomy and the physiology of the human body, when it comes to jaw structure, tooth structure, digestive tract, the pH of our body fluids, humans are closest to fruit-eating monkeys by a long shot, and we're actually furthest from true carnivores like cats and canines. And I'm not saying that this guy is right or wrong, but his message resonated with me enough for me to at least say I'm going to give this diet a shot. And so I remember throwing out the salmon that I was defrosting for dinner that night, and I gathered all the fruits and berries, bananas that I could find, and that was my dinner. And from that point out, I kind of went cold turkey with everything else except fruit. I'm kind of a person of extremes like that, but it was challenging. But I was able to find some people who were doing this diet successfully. They gave me some really good diets, but it was actually at the same time very scary because for the first time, I really couldn't rely on anybody else's guidance but my own. I really had to listen to my own intuition and inner guidance when I had transitioned to more of a paleo diet. There were so many people who were ahead of me on the path who were already doing it, influencers, big name people who I could just, go on Instagram and find a meal plan and follow it. And so transition into this fruitarian style diet, it was tough. But eventually I settled on this kind of mono fruiting, where you do one fruit at a time. It tends to digest a lot better, but I did like a full watermelon for breakfast and maybe 2-3 pounds of grapes for lunch and 15 bananas for dinner. It felt ridiculous, but I actually felt really, really good, very light. I had a ton of mental clarity, a ton of sustained energy throughout the day, but there is most definitely an adjustment period. And this is what I noticed first was this intense physical detox where your body just starts to purge all this waste that was stored in the cells. And usually at this stage, people think they're losing muscle because you'll lose a lot of weight. You'll slim out a lot, but what you're actually losing is all the mucus and the inflammation and the fluid between your muscle cells as your body starts to flush out all the accumulated heavy metals and pesticides and mold and toxins. It's really quite gross, honestly. And it could be really intense. You feel tired at times, you feel lethargic, kind of low on energy. It's a lot like being sick because that's really what a cold is this detox response where the body says that, hey, I got to flush out all this waste. And what I found in this period after a few weeks is that I actually needed a little bit of cooked food every once in a while because the detox was so intense. So I would throw in maybe some boiled potatoes or some steamed veggies or some cooked rice. And what I learned through this is that cooked food is actually a stimulant. It's not that much different from, say, coffee or drugs, and you almost get these withdrawal symptoms. But when you do have that cooked food, what it does is it slows the detox. So you'll go from feeling these symptoms of the body detoxing to feeling this hit of energy. But when you get this hit of energy from cooked food, what happens is you always come back down to below where you started, and you'll start to get these hunger cues and that we're so familiar with. But when you're weaning yourself off of this cooked food, it does feel a lot like withdrawal symptoms from quitting coffee or quitting any kind of substance or drug. But this was really transformative in my relationship with food because it gave me a lot of clarity about what does the body actually need to function optimally and what is it we think we want. And this brings me to kind of the next area, the next thing I noticed. I would say that physical detox went on for quite a few months, honestly. And after that, I thought I was like, I'm good, the detox is over, I'm in the clear. But I was wrong because what came next, what really surprised me was the emotional detox. And what I mean by that is these deep layers of emotional energy that were stored up in my body started coming up and purging and releasing all these unresolved emotions and traumas, most of them from early childhood. And so for months and months after that, it felt like everything that was going on in my life was there to push my buttons and remind me of all these old patterns, these old wounds, so they could come up into my conscious awareness. And what was really interesting during this period is that I would crave foods that I liked from my early childhood. I wouldn't crave the big extravagant meals that I would cook for myself during my college days. I would miss things like bread and pizza and pasta and rice all of my childhood foods that I lived on back then. And this was super interesting to me because these were foods that I hadn't craved for a really long time. And so it got me thinking. I started to become aware of this really fascinating relationship between the foods we eat and their vibrational resonance with the energy of certain emotional memories that are stored up in our body. And what I've come to believe now is that most of our food decisions are actually based on emotion. There's a part of us deep down that wants to relive some memory or some experience of early childhood, of being, there with mom and dad, of being safe, of being taken care of having this security. And I think the vibration of certain foods end up being tied to certain emotional imprints that are within our body. And so most of our cravings actually originate from this deep emotional place. Now, vibration, what do I mean by vibration? Let's talk a little bit about the vibration of different foods. Fruit is what we would call a high vibrational food. It's the highest vibrational food. Raw fruits they're living foods, and they charge you with electrical energy. They give you what's been called chi or life force or prana in some conditions. And when you eat them, you'll feel very light, you'll feel very alive, like you have this sustained sort of energy. And we can move down from there. If fruit is the highest vibration, a step down from there would be vegetables. These are the parts of the plants that really they didn't develop to be eaten, but they do provide us with a lot of nutrition. And so vegetables, they tend to be a little bit lower in their vibration, but they're very grounding. So fruits charge you with electrical energy. Vegetables are great for grounding. Below that, you kind of get into the grains, the dairy, and then meat is the lowest vibrational food that we consume. Now, there's no arguing that meat is the most nutrient dense, without a doubt. It provides all the raw materials that your body needs, but it is the most heavy and the most dense in terms of its vibrational energy, especially if you're eating conventionally raised meat. The way that these animals are treated and the way that they're slaughtered, they live most of their life in a state of fear and a state of suffering, and that energy gets stored in the cells. And when you eat that meat, it becomes a part of you. This is it goes along with an old Ayurvedic principle that you take on the energy of the food you consume, meaning if you consume this animal and it's got fear and suffering stored up in its cells, this energy gets assimilated into your body. It becomes a part of you, this sort of primal aggressive energy. And at that point, it must either be expressed outwardly or it gets stored up in your own body. And so there you have kind of the two extremes, the carnivore animal-based diet on one hand and the fruitarian raw vegan on the other. And people do have good results with both, I think, mainly because you're eliminating the processed junk foods with all the preservatives and pesticides and fake ingredients. But they are very different diets, and I don't think you could say that one is right or one is wrong. I think it depends completely on your own personal goals and where you're at in your journey. But one will provide you with this. It'll give you all the nutrients, all the nuts and bolts that your body needs to thrive. The other will charge you with this electrical spiritual energy, and so you have depending on whether your goals are physical growth and working out, getting really strong, or on the other hand, spiritual growth, I think your diet is going to be very highly dependent on what your personal goals and needs are. And for me personally, I find myself in a more spiritual crossroads in my life right now. I think it's super interesting to look at how the human diet evolved. Personally, I believe that there was a time when humans were breatharians, that we were so spiritually connected to God, source, and other people that we derive their energy directly from chi or life force through the breath, and that I think this human vessel is designed to live for hundreds of years, just like we see in pretty much the ancient texts from all traditions. Are these individuals living for hundreds or thousands of years? And my belief is that over time, over the course of tens of thousands of years, that human beings slowly devolved. And when we devolved from breatharians and we started to lose our connection from God or source, that the first thing we started eating was probably fruit, because fruit is kind of nature's agreement with humans. The plant kingdom pretty much says, we'll give you this nutrient-rich, enzyme-rich food that will provide for your body's needs, and in return you will disperse our seeds for us. And so I think fruits, these high vibrational fruits, were the first things that humans started eating, and from there, as we sort of dropped lower and lower in our state of consciousness, more into fear and separation and survival, that we moved eventually into vegetables, and then we learned how to cultivate our own grains, and then we moved to animal products, dairy and meat. And I think this is where we find ourselves today, that humanity is still very much rooted in this fear-based consciousness, where we need these huge amounts of food, and the body really only survives and thrives for a handful of decades. And so my theory is, and I could be very wrong about this, but I think that if we want to continue evolving ourselves to reach our highest spiritual potential, that our goal should be to climb that ladder of consciousness in reverse. If humanity thousands of years ago descended the ladder, that it's our job and our goal right now to climb that ladder. And at our current state of spiritual evolution, these physical bodies of ours, they're very carbon-based. Everything in medicine and health is this chemical equation that if you put certain raw materials in, you'll get an output on the other end. And my own belief is that this massive spiritual shift that humanity is going through is going to fundamentally change the way that this human vehicle operates, this body. And I think that in the coming decades, in the coming centuries, the human body is going to transition from this carbon-based meat suit to this crystalline, light-based body. And that when humanity reaches a certain level of spiritual consciousness at a certain point in our development, the body is going to become this self-sustaining machine where we don't need to burn chemical energy from physical food. And instead, we're going to live once again off of this life force and chi and breath, and that all the vitamins and minerals that the body needs to sustain itself is going to come from full spectrum light exposure. So it's like humanity right now is transitioning from being these gas guzzling trucks into these clean burning electric cars. And but to get from point A to point B, there's this big leap that we need to take to bridge that gap, and that jump can be really difficult at this 3D level of consciousness. It takes time, and there's most definitely a transition period. Now, I haven't hit the point yet where I can do all fruit all the time. I still go through detox and emotional purges. I still have symptoms and skin breakouts that tell me that I'm still detoxing from certain things in my environment. And so I'm still in this transition period. My diet it's not perfect all the time. It's not always consistent. It shifts based on what I sense my body needs. And I do still have days where I'll do cooked food from time to time, maybe some white rice or boiled potatoes, maybe even a little bit of sourdough bread. I might have a big salad with some veggies. I also started introducing some raw milk and raw cheese from time to time, just because I'm training pretty hard right now. I'm training for a half Ironman triathlon. I still lift weights 3 to 4 times a week, and I've just found that this raw milk and raw cheese has helped invigorate me a lot. I feel good training, so I'm going to stick with that for the time being. And so, yeah, I'm not what you would call or label raw vegan. I don't like these labels of these fad diets where we make all our dietary choices to fit within the box of these labels. Right now, I'm probably closest to what you would call an Essene diet. If you're familiar with the Essene group, these were the very secretive sect of spiritual Jews around the time of Christ, and they kind of perfected this diet of spiritual ascension, and it centered a lot around raw living foods. And this is what I noticed the most is I can tell a big difference between when I'm eating cooked foods. I kind of feel slow and lethargic, next to when I'm eating raw life-giving foods, whether it's fruits or veggies or even raw dairy. I feel incredibly light, incredibly alive inside, clear in the mind. And so this has been the biggest thing for me is sticking to the raw as much as I can. I think the biggest thing is really just being able to tap into the intelligence of our body and listening to what our body wants and needs, not worrying about following any sort of fad diet or fitting within the label of any particular diet. I personally, I would have no problem going back to meat at any point if I felt that was the best thing for me, because I'm not really attached to the label. And so I'm still learning these things. Every day I'm learning something new. I'm gaining new insights. I'm trying to connect the dots just to figure out what this all means, really. And like I said, I think there's a lot of people who are going through this. It can be really confusing and scary a lot of times. And so maybe this is you. Maybe you're going through this, or maybe you don't agree with a word I said, and that's great too. But either way, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know down in the comments, and let me know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future from here on out. If you would like to work through this process with me one-on-one, be sure to click the link down in the description below. As always, please hit the like and subscribe button as well. That really helps me out. But yeah, I appreciate you joining me and tuning in for this video. I look forward to producing more content, and I'll see you guys soon.